Support for your public radio station comes from our members and from Mary Cariola Center, providing education and life skills solutions designed to empower individuals and the families of those with complex disabilities. Mary Cariola Center, transforming lives of people with disabilities. More at marycariola.org.
From WXXI News, this is Connections. I'm Evan Dawson. Co-hosting this hour with my colleague Patrick Hoskin, and our connection this hour was made 30 years ago, 1995, the first time that Rochester was the home to the Gateways Music Festival. As the founders describe it, Gateways was created to counteract the isolation and underestimation faced by many black classical artists. For 27 years, Gateways existed exclusively in Rochester. Then in 2022, Gateways went to New York City, Carnegie Hall. On Sunday, April 22nd, 2022, the Gateways Orchestra sold out Carnegie Hall, marking the first time that an all-black symphony orchestra played to a sellout crowd in the history of that decorated venue. In fact, the Gateways team says it's the only time that Carnegie has hosted an all-black symphony orchestra, period.
And Gateways continues to grow with a spring festival in Rochester and events in other cities as well. There's a fall festival with a focus on chamber music, a chamber players group, a brass collective, and a Gateways showcase series. On the national level, a new presidential administration is trying to steer the arts away from a focus on diversity. President Trump appointed himself the chair of the board of the Kennedy Center and promised more programming like Kid Rock and less programming focused on artistic diversity. But meanwhile, Gateways is continuing its work, celebrating musicians of African descent while asking communities to understand the history that those artists have endured.
And the Rochester Festival is coming up in just a few weeks. Let's welcome our guest this hour. On the line with us is the president and artistic director of the Gateways Music Festival, Alex Lang. Alex, welcome. Thanks for being with us.
Oh, thanks for having me.
And in studio, Armin Hall is the director of programs for the Gateways Music Festival. Armin, thank you for being with us.
Thank you for having me.
And Herb Smith, who is a trumpeter for the Rochester Philharmonic Orchestra, leader of the Eastman Youth Jazz Orchestra, trumpeter with the Gateways Brass Collective. Welcome back to the program.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
Now, there's a lot to talk about, and I just want to mention briefly here, if you get to the calendar starting Monday, April 21st, Tuesday, April 22nd, Wednesday, April 23rd, Thursday, April 24th. It's coming fast. There are events every day, and we'll get more specific this hour. But, Armin, you guys ready for that?
Yes, we're very excited. There was a slight
You better
hesitation.
say yes.
Yes,
Pretty
we
close
are
there.
ready. We're excited about it for sure. Ready to be back in Rochester again.
How you feeling, Alex? Are you pretty ready?
Yeah, and I'm really excited. I've got an amazing team as well represented by Arvin there in studio, and the artists are incredible. It's great music. It's going to be exciting.
Well, we're going to get there in a bit here. I want to just start by asking about some of what our guests are what they're feeling as the national scene and the pressure on diversity initiatives has shifted a lot in just a few months here. So, my colleague Patrick Hoskin mentioned in the intro, the President of the United States appointed himself chair of the board of the Kennedy Center. He said he wanted to get away from, in his words, wokeness at Kennedy, and in his words, diversity initiatives generally. And so you've seen some artists say, that's it, I'm not playing Kennedy. They've announced that they're not doing it. And then you've seen others say, I'm playing as long as I'm still booked here because it's important for people to hear me. And there's a lot of pressure going in a lot of different directions there. And I wonder, first of all, Alex, what do you make of some of what you're seeing there?
Yeah, well, first and foremost, I think one thing I want to really clarify is, and this is not a new way of describing ourselves. Gateways, though, is really clear that we're not a diversity initiative, right? And we've been saying that for the last decade. So that's not a reaction to the current environment. That's just the way we talk about ourselves. And as by means of understanding that, we often use the metaphor to understand Gateways like a historically Black college or university, right? So it's not a diversity initiative. It's not there to change other institutions. It's there as a home unto itself, and that's what Gateways is. It's a home for Black classical artistry. So I think the most important thing that I want to just say off the bat is that, and again, that's important for us going back before the current environment. And seeing as I'm remote, I'm going to try to make sure I don't just monologue here because I can't get any human cues as to what else is going on.
You can go as long as you want, Alex.
Well, I definitely want to bring in my colleagues about this, and we're certainly, the environment that we're making music in, that we're all living in now, is the environment. As it relates to the Kennedy Center and the president, one thing I want to put into context is, perspective in terms of, how you see the administration. I can cast our mind back to 2008, and I can imagine a lot of people celebrating Barack and Michelle Obama taking an interest in the Kennedy Center. So I think that, as it relates to, the way it feels to be making art as a Black person right now, the way it feels to be making art that celebrates Black culture, to the degree that people understand DEI to be a surrogate for race and Black people, or Black power, or Black culture, or Black perspective, Black voice. And I think that is true, right? That it is a surrogate, at least in part, for a lot of people. That makes the work that we feel, the work that we do, feel even more vital and prescient. And it makes, the gathering of Gateways. Gateways started really as a gathering of artists. Gateways brings people together with Black classical artistry. That's what we do. If you want to understand us in one sentence. And the first group of people that we brought together was that group of artists to counteract that isolation that you mentioned there at the opening. And so for that reason, that being sort of a core part of the magic, and it is that joy, that celebration, that unique opportunity to make music that you love and have coded onto your very nervous system, to do that in this environment that is so rare for us as artists. That's special all the time. I think definitely it's going to have even more specialness and energy this year. A big part of Gateways' mission lives behind the scenes. So there's the concert making, but there's also the intellectual and artistic and emotional, spiritual exchange that happens between the artists. And so that part of the work of the festival is going to be even more vibrant this year. And as someone who used to really participate in those, I'm really looking forward to creating that environment for these artists. I know the things that are going to come out of this, not just the music we make this week, but the ideas, the connections, the inspiration, the filling of the cup, to keep doing this thing, that's going to be really powerful. And so it's charged and vital, and we can't wait for it.
Alex, let me just follow up with one point on this, and then I will throw it to your colleagues in the studio for their thoughts on this point. I absolutely take the point about what Gateways is and what it is not, and what its mission is, and why it exists, and what it celebrates. Part of where I'm sort of contextualizing all of this is in the way that, if you want to look at this administration, for example, there isn't a nuanced look at what it means to have endured all kinds of isolation, separation, racism, to the point where they took Jackie Robinson out of materials, photographs of Jackie Robinson removed from federal archives. It's like Jackie Robinson was not a DEI initiative. Jackie Robinson was a baseball player celebrated for his baseball skill, and also understood to have endured a lot more than the white players of the day. So, I mean, I guess I'm comparing Jackie Robinson to Gateways here, and that Gateways is not a diversity initiative, but Gateways celebrates the talent and artistry of everyone involved with it, while understanding that isolation, that some of the racism that some of those artists have endured. And I don't know that this administration is making a distinction. I think they are looking at colleges across the country and saying, do you have a DEI officer? Do you have a DEI initiative? Oh, do you have an all-black orchestra? Like, I don't know if we should be funding you. And those questions are pretty pressing at a lot of campuses. And that's why I kind of want to make sure I took your temperature on what it is like, because your mission, as you say, hasn't changed. You are not planning anything that scales back what Gateways does.
No, not at all. No. So yeah, I mean, look, the environment is the environment. We came to Rochester in 1995 because our founder, Arminta Hummings Dumasani, who had started Gateways in 1993 in Winston-Salem. So we say sometimes that we were born in Winston-Salem, but made in Rochester. Um, from the beginning, there's been a relationship with the Eastman School of Music and the University of Rochester, stemming from those being the places that brought Arminta to Rochester, and they've been a supporter of ours from the beginning. We formalized that relationship in 2016, and entering into a memo of understanding between ourselves and the University of Rochester and its Eastman School of Music. We are and remain an independent 501c3 organization. We are not a program of the University of Rochester. Of course, we're watching what's happening, across the country and specifically in and around our friends in Rochester and the university, and we're staying in close contact. Again, just to go back to what I said earlier, I mean, I think that there's no doubt that the focus on what is being called anti-wokeness or anti-DEI. I think it's important to lift that up and say what we're against then, right? So we're against diversity, we're against equity, we're against inclusion. I think that obviously that's concerning. And where it leaves us though, is ever more committed. Your point about Jackie Robinson, we would all add to that the temporary removal of the story of the Tuskegee Airmen,
absolutely,
from the Naval Academy site, right?
Yeah.
So so that's disturbing. That's concerning. And I'm going to toss to Armand and Herb, because when that happened, I called Armand that weekend in real time to talk about how we had to recommit to our programming around the Harlem Hellfighters, which Herb and the Gateways Brass Collective have been doing a wonderful job of amplifying and telling this incredible story of barrier breaking, the journey towards Black freedom in America. So yeah, let me bring in some other voices here. I'm sitting. Yeah, please.
Armand Hall is the director of programs for Gateways. Go ahead.
Yeah, and so having that conversation about the Tuskegee Airmen being removed, heartbreaking, but not surprised. Being a Black man in America, it was always impressed upon me that it was my responsibility and our responsibility to keep our stories going. And if we think that somebody like Jackie Robinson can be just randomly removed, that shows that how important this work is. And I think, when Gateways is always looking forward and creating music and working with artists, helping them create what they want to do. We're continuing to tell stories so that there are more stories to fight for, while also looking back at the Harlem Hellfighters and other stories that need to be amplified, just as a part of who we are and what we do. As a longtime educator, and I teach at Eastman now, and our students want to know how to belong in their communities. So even though these words are going away, the reality is that they're still precious to making life happen. And everybody needs to be included. Whether you're in a homogeneous sort of white community, there are lots of diversities within that community that need to be addressed. And so we're trying to make sure that the Black musicians who are professionals that we bring in from all over the country, that come with their own thoughts and ideas, come together to make something that is worthy of being remembered and to push and create new things with.
And Herb?
Well, I want to go way back. There's this whole thing about diversity, right? And the color and getting rid of things. But to me, if you go back to Mozart and classical music, but you would probably say that Mozart would be considered the most non-DEI, non-Black type of music. But little do people know that, St. George, was actually the composer before Mozart, and he was a Black man. And so some people call him the Black Mozart, but some people call Mozart the white St. George. He was older than Mozart. Mozart lived actually in the same building as him. So it is not a far-fetched stretch to say that Mozart heard his music first. And St. George was a conductor, composer in Paris, all over Europe. And he was a black man. So you can talk about taking down certain black things, but the white things that you are holding up have been influenced deeply by people of color. Let's go to Kid Rock, right? Let's go to Kid Rock. What does he play? What type of music does Kid Rock play?
What category is that, Patrick?
Now it's like sort of more of a country type
pop?
thing, but he started
Right.
kind of appropriating hip hop in the first part of his career.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. So here we're going to loud someone that we want to say that's not diversity. The whole undercurrent of what he's doing is from a black place. Even look at the most crazy rock and roll music, right? Where did it come from? The first groups that came out in the 1920s, they were black bands. The whole idea of bass, drums, and some type of chordal instrument is something that came out of jazz in the 1900s.
You're going to tell me that jazz has black roots?
But I'm
Yes.
saying it's all mixed in.
So-
It's like you can say one thing, you can say you're going to take away these things, but you're not.
You're
It's
gonna say, I don't
not.
care about
It's
race.
there.
No more diversity. We're just going to do Kid Rock. By the way, that's a
Well,
history
just
I
to-
wouldn't have known. Go ahead, Alex. Yep, go ahead.
No, and apologies for over.
Yeah, no problem.
No, I just wanted to draw on some Herb just said, right, about it's all mixed in, and so Gateways brings people together with Black classical artistry. The first group that we brought together, is that community of artists. That's the beating heart of what Gateways is and does. But from the beginning, we have been fortunate to gather unto ourselves, to have the vibrancy of this art attract a broad group of people, multiracial, multi-generational. We love that. Our mission is to bring people together with Black classical artistry. So our work is more vital than ever. The need, as Armand said, to tell our stories, to uplift our history, to preserve it, is more vital than ever. It's the coming, and I think personally, right, there's a real desire. I hear it in the way you're talking, Evan, that there's a desire for people to come together, to say that, to demonstrate with their presence, with their attention, with their dollars, what matters to them. And so I think that there's an opportunity for Gateways to really answer the call and to bring to people something that they need more than ever. Right? I think we always need art. We always need music. I mean, don't get me started on that. But right now, I think we need it more in a general sense, and specifically, I think we need Gateways Music Festival.
In a moment, we're going to talk specifically about what is coming up later this month, so you can put it on your calendars and make plans to attend if you want. And I'm so glad Patrick is here co-piloting the ship with me, because his musical knowledge is much more encyclopedic than mine.
As I just demonstrated with Kid Rock.
With Kid Rock. You're a big Kid Rock fan, I take it.
Appreciate that.
You know what? I did have his CD in 1998. I will
Right.
say, yeah,
Is
I
that
did.
right?
The big one. I mean, it was like a platinum
Yes.
album. It was really,
Yes.
really big. Yeah.
Yeah.
I was like one of the only people who didn't know this. But so many of these genres, to Herb's point, Patrick, really, I mean, it's easy to convince ourselves, well, I don't want to talk about race. I don't want to talk about diversity. I just want to listen to music and then pretend that something is outside of all of those roots and connections. But so much kind of flows together, or flows from different sources, doesn't it?
It does, and there's so much that I was thinking about in terms of there are a lot of questions. Sort of, Rachelle Sennett is performing, and her Bach to Black series is kind of her piece that she'll be doing at Hatch Recital Hall on April 21st. She was talking a lot about what that program is, which is essentially 6 Bach pieces, and then she incorporates other black composers or composers of African descent in to sort of blend the two together, sequence them. I was thinking a lot about like the questions of you have the questions of performers, right? Who's actually on the stage? You have the questions of the composers whose work is actually being performed, and then you have the question of who's actually seeing the performance. Now, all of those things have to probably I mean, they're always in conversation with each other, and I wonder how that plays out in terms of like a programming standpoint, I think, for Gateways, and in terms of just incorporating all of that, because to Evan's point, there's so much different cross-pollination, collaboration, but how do those conversations about, the multi-layered approach kind of play out?
Armin?
Well, I think we're always trying to make sure that we connect with the musicians we know and to find new ones who haven't come to Gateways, and in a sense ask them what they want to do and how they want to perform as musicians and what's exciting to them, and then we partner with them to make programs that we know that the Rochester community will enjoy if we're here. Or, for example, when we went to Chicago, we tried to be very specific about picking music that was either somehow relational, either historically or currently to the area. And then it's about putting on a great piece of art, because you talk about the three constituencies at a concert, and that artist needs to feel supported. So our team is working really hard to make sure that they can make the best music that they have and that their program represents something. And then how do we get the community in here? In Rochester, we've got a great art-loving community, but they're very much siloed into different sort of things. For sure. And so we're trying to make sure that our promotion and connection outreaches brings those siloed communities together for this experience, so that it's not just the performer. They could perform any place, but we're bringing them here to Rochester under the banner of Gateways. We want that to be a seminal thing for all parties involved.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Herb, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, like, for me, it's important that if we're playing this music, that we're playing the music for the people, And so if we're playing, we're black players, we're playing music of composers of African descent, we want those people in the seats, So that's where I think Gateways really tries to go where the people are to try to bring them in. That's important to me, like to really play music for my people in a sense. Like I wrote a piece, Leaning on the Everlasting Arms, and so basically it's a piece, it's an old spiritual, it's an old hymn, and a lot of times we play it for audiences, for white audiences, and people like it. But what really means it to me is when I play it and there's an old black deaconess coming up to me and says, Herb, that brought me right back to church. To me, I caught the essence of it. I caught the essence of the piece. I'm performing the piece, I'm showcasing the piece, but I haven't left its roots. It's easy to take a piece and then kind of just make it a classical piece, but to really connect with its roots. And that's why you really want people of African descent in the seats as well. To me, it's it's having that whole thing, right? The programming, the people that are watching it, and the people that are playing it. That's really great.
Mm-hmm. Can I ask a clumsy follow-up to that, Herb?
Sure.
I'm the king of clumsy questions.
Clumsy's good. Clumsy's good.
One of the things that Gateways touts on your website is an ability to change the perceptions of audience members, especially those who believe that a lack of racial diversity is evidence of an absence of talent, interest, or inclination. And you heard Alex say earlier this hour, what do we think DEI is? What is it actually about? And I think that this is the dividing line on DEI and related issues right now. And this is the way I would describe it. And I think it comes right down to what is said right there on the Gateways website, which is that people who feel maybe intensely opposed to DEI believe that unqualified people, often people of color, are going to be given something that might go to somebody else who's, quote, qualified or has merit on some quota system, as opposed to what I think the intention of DEI is, which is saying if you cast a narrow net in your own circles, in circles of power, in circles of advantage, you're probably going to have a pretty homogenous set of people who are even applying for jobs or sitting in the chair at the RPO, et cetera. But if you believe that there is talent in a much broader sense, it's going to take some work to make sure people even know that you want them in the room or that there's an opportunity. but you will find qualified people who can fly your plane, who can play in your orchestra,
Right.
who don't all look the same. And they are not only on the stage because of an initiative, a quota, but because they're qualified.
Correct.
And you had to take a little extra work to find them or to make sure they knew that this opportunity existed. And the stereotype that you're right about here, this idea that, well, there's probably not a lot of black musicians because, this is probably not their genre. That's not their skill set. You're smiling at her, but I mean, that stereotype clearly is
It's
something
clear.
you want to address.
Yeah. No, I mean that's what Gateways is all about. I mean, there are qualified black classical players, virtuosic, and this festival showcases that. It showcases the excellence in classical music that has always been there in the black community. The thing that I am really big on is talking about casting a net, is having schools that give music to kids when they're young. That's the big part that starts to cast the net, right? City school music programs all across the country. One of the things they cut first is music. And so that net is getting shorter and shorter and shorter. But that doesn't mean that we're not out there. I mean, for me, I'm the only black musician in RPO, and kudos to RPO for hiring Gerard Hardiman, who is the new assistant conductor, who is an African American man. So kudos to them for that. But there are more out there, and I feel like, well, it used to be you had to have your company represent the city you're in, but it's we're getting away from that now.
Well, and I mean, let's be honest. The 93-person orchestra that you'll see, the Gateways Festival Orchestra, it is comprised of only professional players. I mean, we have so many players that we could fill the orchestra 2 or 3 times without even trying really hard, and we've had to create initiatives to make sure that a third of the orchestra is new, and this will be their first time at Gateways because there's so many people wanting and qualified to fill these spots in the orchestra. So I think Gateways, especially in our public-facing performance, we represent that completely. These are all professional players. I know the Gateways grew and didn't always have that in its beginnings as it was starting to set roots, but now they're everywhere. And what we do is we provide a space for them to come together and do what they do as professionals in a different environment.
Alex, you want to add to that too?
Yeah, well, I would just say, one, just to locate, our work relative to this conversation. Look, one, I totally resonate with the contextualizing the concert experience, right? I like to say that music isn't just sound; it's sound and words and people, and it's all of those things, right? So, there's the music is the sound, but it's also the words we use to contextualize it, the stories we tell about why it's important, the way composers talk about their work, and then of course the people making it, the people in the room. There's in classical music the sort of its strength and its vulnerability is the way it sort of is organized around divisional bureaucracy, right? Like lots of specialization, distinguishing roles. Composers compose, performers play. Some of that's starting to get blurred a little bit, and it's been blurred in the past, and I think that's a good thing. But I say all that to say that, like, there's the composer who creates the work, but the work needs to be realized, even if it's realized by the same person who composed it. But the work needs to be realized by artists. That's the role that we play. We're realizing artists. So when a stage full of Black artists realize the work of, let's say, Dvorak, which we'll be doing on April 24th at Kodak Hall, Dvorak's 8th Symphony, an incredible work of art that's going to open up that whole program. But the realization, right, the people and the words that are surrounding that, like, what does this mean? Why are we doing this? That also impacts the art itself, and that can't be separated from it, right? And so that's part of what's happening. We are Black people expressing Black culture when we're realizing works that aren't by Black composers, right? At least in part, because the realization can't be separated from the work and the context and the sense of meaning put around it. I also just want to hold up that, like, we have the opportunity and to really remind ourselves that this is about art. And so as it relates to standards, and classical music loves that. And, we organize ourselves around competitions, and we sort of like to style ourselves around sort of as if there are objective truths. Oh, this is the best violinist. This is, we hold these competitions. This is the best young violinist in Rochester, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. As if these things are objective. And it creates a really rich environment for a lot of things. I thrived in it as a young, striving artist. And so I'm not dismissing it, but I am saying that that's not an artistic perspective, though, in and of itself, right? And so we get to say what makes great art, and an audience can either agree with us or disagree with us. We get to say what our art needs. To Herb's point about the number of Black people inside the Rochester Philharmonic, before I had the honor of taking over this position, I played 20 some years as principal clarinet of the Phoenix Symphony. That's how I came to Gateways first, is as a performer in 2001. These orchestras can make decisions and are making decisions about what their art needs, what it requires, what it requires to be great, to tell the stories that it wants to tell, what its sort of theory of the case is. And the theory of the case for us at Gateways is the people in the space matter. The shared life experience matters. It influences the art. It adds an energy and a perspective and a vitality that makes our art unique. And it makes it the art that we have to make. And so, I just want to put that it's, so we, as artists, we don't have to subscribe to these narratives of objectivism. Art is subjective, and our belief is that this is the art that we need to make. This is the art that our ancestors and our history calls us to make, and audiences respond to it. And so, I wanted to bring that part into view.
Well, after we take our only break, we're going to go through the schedule. We're going to talk about what's coming up in just a few weeks here with the Gateways Music Festival. You're hearing Alex Lang on the line with us, the president and artistic director of Gateways. Armin Hall is director of programs for the Gateways Music Festival. Herb Smith is with us, who is a trumpeter with the Gateways Brass Collective, trumpeter for the Rochester Philharmonic Orchestra, leader of the Eastman Youth Jazz Orchestra. All with us this hour, and we're going to come back and go over that schedule after this only break on Connections. This is Connections. I'm Evan Dawson. My co-host at this hour is Patrick Hoskin, my colleague here at WXXI and City Magazine. And I don't know anybody in this building who knows more about music. Well, maybe Mona Segatol-Islami.
We're sitting very close to the whole classical crew.
Steve Johnson, Brenda Tremblay. This is a great group down there. So, okay, outside of them, I think you might be the top.
Thank you. I take that with a... It's very, very welcoming to hear that.
And Patrick, you mentioned earlier that Rochelle Sennett is giving a piano recital. That is starting us off on Monday, April 21st. So when you think about Gateways coming up here, if you want to mark your calendars and see some of these performances, we're going to take you Monday through Thursday and help you see what's coming up. Monday, April 21st, 7:30 p.m. at Hatch Recital Hall. Rochelle Sennett, piano recital there. Patrick mentioned some of the details, but Armin, anything else you want the audience to know about that evening?
I think it's going to be a wide-ranging performance of pieces that are modern, some just written a few years ago, all the way back to Bach. And this is foreshadowing some of the CDs that she has put out already and some that are coming out. I think it'll be a great performance to kick off the festival, which we have started to do with a pianist because our founder, Arminta Hummings-Dumasani, was a pianist here at Eastman. And so we honor that tradition by having a piano recital.
All right. And so That's Monday evening. Now, on Tuesday, before we even get to the evening performance, you mentioned, I think, during our brief break, Armin, that there is some school outreach and different things happening in the community. Tuesday? Is that Tuesday?
Yes, yeah. So on Tuesday, the Gateways Brass Collective are finalizing plans for them to go over to East High School and do a performance for the students over there, because the youth initiatives and what that means in Rochester and wherever we go is a large part of what we do under the banner of the Young Musicians Institute. So that'll be the first offering that they're doing that day, and for our Young Musicians Institute before we get to the evening concert.
Okay.
And
Go
I
ahead.
was,
Yeah.
well, I was going to say, Herb, so you said the word virtuosic, not that a few minutes ago, right? So I was looking at the evening program, right? So we're talking about Curtis Stewart, right? Eastman alum.
Right.
His Seasons of Change, which is Tuesday, April 22nd at Hatch Recital Hall. It sort of reimagines Vivaldi's Four Seasons. But I was really gripped by the sort of accompanying description. Okay, so in the future, this is the description. In the future, after climate change has ravaged the planet, only a few people remain, and they have forgotten their history. To know where they have come from, they rely on an AI that retells the past differently, adapting it to each person in order to help them survive this harsh new world. History becomes fluid, ever-changing like a dreamscape. So I was very gripped by that. How you want to talk about that
I'm
program?
terrified. Patrick. Patrick is gripped. I'm terrified.
These are things that we talk about a lot in this building, by the way. So that's why I'm like, oh yeah, let's talk about that.
Well, we're gripped by it as well, and that's the wonderful thing with working with these amazing artists, because Gateways becomes another place that they can push their art, and to have this, reflection of Vivaldi's Four Seasons, but done in an Afrofuturistic vision, where with accompanying poetry, there are voices. So there's electroacoustic treatments to the piece. There are voices of the unhoused from Phoenix, and to make a Rochester focused of this, Curtis Stewart has interviewed some of the climate scientists at the University of Rochester, and some of the people working in our nonprofit climate organizations here in Rochester, to have them answer questions, and he's going to include them as a part of the performance as well.
So their voices might be woven
Yes.
right through that piece as well.
Yes.
Yeah, wow.
That's called Seasons of Change, and that is Tuesday, April 22nd. Starts at 7:30 p.m. at Hatch Recital Hall with Curtis Stewart. What an amazing evening. Alex, do you want to talk about that too?
I mean, I'm really excited for that. I want to echo what, Armin said. And, some of the questions about, like, how do we position ourselves, right, in this moment? In some regards, I have the simplest job, right? I need to make sure that this space stays open. So that artists like Curtis and Rochelle and the Brass Collective and Anthony Parther and Damian Sneed and Janae Bridges and the Gateways Festival Orchestra can make their art. And they will speak for what they want to say, and audiences will engage and respond to that. So Curtis is a great example of that. I love the Rochester connection. And then Patrick, like you, it's fascinating. And the part that I'm really interested, in addition to the climate change and the dialogue with Vivaldi and Seasons, which is this iconic piece, right? And Curtis is a virtuoso. So it's like, what do you do with your talent and your ability and your 10,000 hours? But also the part of this AI that tells us the history from the sort of customizing it, right? And it sort of evokes a little bit of the news and information silos we find ourselves in these days, of getting to hear what on the one hand you feel like you need to hear, right? Because you want to be confirmed in the world, and you want to know that people agree with you. But I'm interested to see how Curtis takes us on a journey. Like, where does that go, right? What happens? What happens to history if now history can be customized? You turn the dials the way we do on news and information right now. So yeah, it's a really exciting program. Of course, the Vivaldi Four Seasons was like literally one of the first albums I ever bought, and so I really feel attached to that piece.
I think it's very apropos, because right now it seems like that's what's happening. History is being changed before our eyes.
Mm-hmm.
Real fast.
It's really being changed. So like something like this program really hits deep. Really hits deep.
Mark your calendars, Tuesday, April 22nd. By the way, Patrick Hoskin, I like to think about what the most powerful people in the world right now think about issues like climate change and AI. Elon Musk said yesterday he increasingly thinks that humanity is just a biological bootloader for digital superintelligence.
Oh, wow.
Great.
Nice.
So,
Well, when you're not surrounded by like meaningful conversations at any point in your life, I can imagine how you get to that point. But
That's an interesting observation.
Or you just watch The Matrix a lot.
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
the plot
so-
line to the
All right, so on we go through the Gateways Music Festival again. It's all coming up here. And Armin, can you tell people online where they can see the full schedule? And
full schedule is available at our website. That is www.gatewaysmusicfestival.org. And right in the heading banner is a Spring 2025 festival, and they'll be able to click right on it.
all right, so we talked about Monday, April 21st, Tuesday, April 22nd, Wednesday, April 23rd. Lot going on. You're live from Hochstein, Herb.
That's right, live from Hochstein.
What's going on that
Gateways
day?
Brass Collective. We have a really good program. We have different music, everything from Piazzolla to Chick Corea to Dizzy Gillespie. I mean, the brass instruments. In classical music is when you go way back to like Bach and Mozart, it was pretty much just like, you play 3 different notes. Like, I'll play a Mozart symphony that's like 30, 40 minutes. And in that whole 40 minutes, I'll play 4 different notes.
Is that
That is true. 1, 5, 1, a 3. There's a 3 in there too. And then maybe a top 1, So yeah, so it's 3 notes. So a lot of times when classical composers, especially later composers like Shostakovich, Aaron Copland, Stravinsky, Ravel, they were influenced by jazz to write for a trumpet in their classical music. So this is another example of how it's all mixed in. You want to just kind of separate something. It's like trying to separate the cream out of your coffee once you poured it in. It's like it's too late. So we do a lot of classical music and jazz in Gateways Brass Collective. It is going to be a very good program, and one of the pieces that we'll be doing is one of my arrangements of Dizzy Gillespie's Manteca.
Now, that's live from Hochstein on Wednesdays.
Yes.
That evening, there is, not at 7:30, it's 7 this
7,
time
yes.
at Hatch. There's a lecture and a panel. What's going on, Armin?
So we have a series called the Paul J. Burgett Lecture and Community Conversation, named after our longtime board member and
one of the best.
and
One of the
University of
best.
Rochester
One of the
administrator.
best.
Yes.
Yes.
And so this
Shout
is
out.
about bringing the community into the sort of academic humanities conversation around music. Our featured composer for this festival is William Levi Dawson, and in his music and how he used the spiritual that he knew to be a source material for new music, and how he was an entrepreneur early and what he did at Tuskegee. So that evening we have Dr. Louise Toppin from the University of Michigan coming. She's a professor there, but she also has created websites and repositories and is a scholar on music by Black composers. And so she's going to come and sort of contextualize for the audience who Dawson was and what he did with his music. Then after she gets done with that, we're going to have a short mini recital by Amber Rogers, who was the 2024 National Association of Negro Musicians Scholarship winner. She's going to do a short recital of Dawson's music, and it just so happens that she is her teacher is Dr. Louise Toppin from the university. So we have that connection there. And then as soon as that is over, we're going to put together a panel of Dr. Toppin, and we have our 2 colleagues from the Tuskegee University, where Dawson was taught for a long time, and they have their own Dawson Institute that just happened last weekend. They're coming up and to have a conversation with University of Rochester's own Corey Hunter, Dr. Corey Hunter, about who Dawson was, how the spiritual has become real source material, not only in American classical music, but spanning outside of that, and to involve the audience in what will be a sort of an audience is coming with their own known information about how they use spirituals and how they've heard them, and then we have these academics sort of putting that together for a community conversation. So it'll be a really nice setup for the concert the next day in Kodak Hall.
And there we
Fantastic.
go. And that takes you right into Thursday, April 24th, 7:30 p.m. at the Kodak Hall at Eastman Theater, the Festival Orchestra.
Yes, the Gateways Festival Orchestra under the direction of Maestro Anthony Parther, who has been with Gateways before, but also come to work with the RPO and the Eastman School of Music. He's an amazing conductor. We also have Janae Bridges, the mezzo-soprano, who is coming to do a world premiere of a piece called Reflections of Resilience, 5 Spirituals, done by Damian Sneed. for voice and orchestra, an orchestral setting of the 5 spirituals that everyone will see the world premiere of that evening, followed up with the Negro Folk Symphony of William Levi Dawson, our featured composer. And this is the 91st year since it was composed, and it is his 125th anniversary. And we're leading that to play that concert again at Carnegie Hall on Sunday. The piece was written in 1934, premiered by Stokowski and the Philadelphia Orchestra. And the week they premiered it in Philadelphia, they also took it to Carnegie Hall. And it is, to our knowledge, it has not been performed in Carnegie Hall since that premiere in 1934. So not only will we be returning it, we'll be returning with an all-black orchestra to realize that in a modern way.
That is fantastic.
And
All right.
Speaking of the Kennedy Center, too, Janae Bridges sang the national anthem there just, a few months ago,
That's
I
right.
think, right? So there's a nice little
symmetry
coming
Yeah,
there. Coming full
symmetry. Look at
circle.
that.
Yeah.
A little symmetry. Alex, anything you want to add to the Thursday evening performance, April 24th?
No, just to amplify how excited we are to play this piece. The concert opens with Dvorak's Eighth Symphony. There's a connection there in that Dvorak is known for being what's sometimes referred to as a folk symphonist, and that he mined the music of his native Bohemia and mixed that folk music into his compositions. Of course, the famous story about him is he comes to the New World and through Harry Burleigh is introduced to the spiritual and points towards the spiritual as this important wellspring for what could be a unique American classical music, though his direction in that regard was largely ignored. We're not doing the symphony that he wrote in America. We're doing the symphony he wrote before that. So the Eighth Symphony, which is really suffused with the music of his land. So on either end of the program, we have these two folk symphonists, Dvorak mining the folk music of Bohemia, and William Levi Dawson, showing what Dvorak understood was possible from what Harry Burleigh introduced to him, the incredible power of the spiritual to inform an American classical music, and that's what William Levi Dawson created. So to be amplifying Dawson, to be collaborating with Tuskegee, to be bringing all these folks in, and then to have a premiere of our own to go along with that really adds to this symmetry. What Dawson said in 1934, and when asked about the piece, he said, "I've not tried to imitate Beethoven or Brahms, Franck or Ravel, but to be just myself, a Negro." And then he went on to say, "To me, the finest compliment that could be paid my symphony when it has its premiere is that it unmistakably is not the work of a white man. I want the audience to say, only a Negro could have written that." But for us, it's such a clear indication of this tradition of Black classical artistry, that classical music has been a platform and a palette for Black artists to tell their story and to be seen in the world. So to be entering that tradition, to be taking the Dawson back to a hall where it was first heard in its premiere week, the fourth time that piece was realized in the world was in Carnegie Hall, and it's not been realized in that hall in the intervening 90 years. So we really are so honored and thrilled to bring a premiere to Rochester, to add to that tradition and to share the emergence of that piece with our Rochester friends and audience, and then to go on to Carnegie. It feels a little bit like completing a circle to realize William Levi Dawson's Negro Folk Symphony in Carnegie Hall. I also want to shout out that will be live simulcast by our friends on WQXR in New York City, and also shout out and thanks to our friends at WXXI. They're also going to carry that live simulcast of the performance from Carnegie Hall. However, don't let that dissuade you from coming out on Thursday, because to be in the room,
You want to see the
for
premiere.
live music is amazing. Absolutely. And to be in the room for the premiere, that's a once in a lifetime moment. It will only happen on Thursday evening. April 24th in Rochester in Kodak Hall.
You gotta be, you
And
gotta
if
be
you're
in the
not
room
there,
where it happened.
You're not
That's
there.
right.
Yeah,
You gotta be in the room where it happened. But down to our last minute or so, I'm gonna ask my colleague, what did we miss this hour? Anything?
I mean, I am personally still thinking about the AI and the take on the Four Seasons, so that's kind of where my brain has been for the past 10 minutes. But
Actually, call me afterwards. We'll geek out together.
And again, if you want to see the full schedule online, Armin, it's gatewaysmusicfestival.com.
.org.
.org. That's
Yes.
why you never trust the host. Gatewaysmusicfestival.org. We'll have that in our show notes for you when you access this program on the multiple platforms. And gentlemen, I wish you well.
Thank you.
It's a very, very busy time, I know, for you, and I hope it is a pure celebration to come. I hope, to Herb's point, you've got a lot of new faces in your audiences and a lot of people who appreciate everything that you do. So thank you for making time for us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And let me thank the guest
Thank
by
you.
name here, Alex Lang. Thank you, by the way, Alex, for making time and hopping on the call with us, President and Artistic Director of Gateway. See you soon, Alex. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Armin Hall, Director of Programs for the Gateways Music Festival. Thank you very much,
Thank you
Armin.
for having me.
Herb Smith. I mean, like, this resume is so long. I'm just going to say trumpeter with the Gateways Brass Collective for this month.
Thank you.
It's always good to talk to you.
Always
Thank
good
you
to
very
talk to
much. Patrick Hoskin, this was fun.
yeah, thanks for having me.
We should do this a little bit more once in a while.
Let's do it.
Yeah, you got nothing to do.
I'm not busy otherwise, and I'm saying this on the air so you know it's true.
Everybody's busy, but it is wonderful to have Patrick Hoskin co-hosting the program, my colleague at WXXI. And there's such a wonderful team that helps put this program together. I don't have every single name or time to tell you everybody, but one day I'm going to do that because it is an absolutely outstanding group, and I'm just the one who's on this lead microphone. So I want to say thank you from all of us at Connections. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching on the WXXI News YouTube. We will be back with you next week on member-supported public radio.
This program is a production of WXXI Public Radio. The views expressed do not necessarily represent those of this station, its staff, management, or underwriters. The broadcast is meant for the private use of our audience. Any rebroadcast or use in another medium without expressed written consent of WXXI is strictly prohibited. Connections with Evan Dawson is available as a podcast. Just click on the Connections link at WXXInews.org.